Picture this, your life is falling apart, and you can't figure out why. Your home feels heavy. Arguments come out of nowhere. Sleep, forget about it. Dark thoughts creep in like uninvited guests. Sound familiar? Here's what nobody tells you. It might not be stress. It might not be circumstances. It could be something you stopped doing without even realizing it. Maria knew this feeling all too well. For 8 years, she held those worn beads every single evening, the familiar rhythm of Hail Marys, the peace that settled over her heart, her sacred time with the Mother of God. Then life got crazy. "But just tonight," she whispered one Tuesday, too exhausted to even think straight. "I'll pray tomorrow instead." Tomorrow became next week. Next week became never. And then everything changed. Her house felt different, cold, like someone had sucked the oxygen out of every room. Her kids started acting up. Her husband became distant. Nightmares haunted her sleep. Maria had no idea she'd opened a door that should have stayed locked. Have you felt it too? That invisible weight pressing down when you've neglected your rosary. Maybe you've wondered if there's really a connection between your prayer life and the chaos swirling around you. Here's the truth. St. Padre Pio didn't just preach about the rosary's power. He saw it. In mystical visions that would make your hair stand on end, he witnessed the invisible war raging around every one of us. Angels and demons, light and darkness, fighting for your soul, your home, every choice you make. The rosary is the weapon for these times. He meant every word. But what happens when you lay down that weapon? What occurs in the spiritual realm when you abandon those beads? Today, I'm revealing 5 unmistakable signs that appear when you fail in your rosary commitment. These aren't coincidences. They're not in your head. They're spiritual realities Padre Pio witnessed over and over again. Stay until the end. Because the 5th sign, it might explain everything you've been experiencing. If you believe in the power of the rosary, write in the comments, "Rosary, my protection." Your witness could save someone who desperately needs to hear this today. Let's dive in. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine an invisible fortress surrounding your soul. Walls of pure light, towers of divine protection, guards that never sleep. That's what happens every time you pick up your rosary. Most people think it's just a prayer, beautiful words passed down through generations. But Padre Pio knew something most of us have forgotten. The rosary isn't just prayer, it's warfare. Every Hail Mary, a sword of light cutting through darkness. Each mystery you contemplate, a window opening to heaven itself. Those worn beads in your hands, weapons that make demons tremble. Padre Pio put it this way: the rosary is like a thorn hedge around the soul. The devil cannot penetrate it without wounding himself. Think about that image. Your daily rosary creates a barrier so real, so powerful, that evil itself recoils, like touching a live wire. But here's the part that breaks my heart. This protection isn't automatic. It requires showing up, day after day, no excuses. The moment you start skipping days, those thorns begin to wither. Small gaps appear, and through those gaps, darkness seeps in. It never happens overnight. Oh no, the enemy is far too clever for that. It starts innocent enough. One busy Monday, "I'll pray double tomorrow," you tell yourself. One stressful week, "But God understands my circumstances." Before you know it, weeks pass. That sacred routine that once anchored your entire day, gone, vanished like morning mist. Padre Pio warned about this gradual abandonment. His words still echo. The soul that stops praying becomes like a house with no locks on the doors. Anyone can enter, and who wants to enter? The very forces your rosary was designed to repel. The confusion your daily prayer used to clear away. The anxiety Mary's peace once soothed. Temptations that felt manageable suddenly become overwhelming tsunamis. Listen, if these spiritual truths are resonating with you, I want to share something that could transform your prayer life forever. We've created a powerful ebook called The Power of the Rosary with Padre Pio, Miracles, Protection, and Divine Graces. This spiritual treasure will teach you how to pray the rosary with deeper devotion and understanding. You'll discover the miracles and testimonies of those who've experienced its power firsthand. You'll learn Padre Pio's most impactful teachings and phrases about prayer. Plus, you'll receive a complete 30-day prayer guide with daily intentions to strengthen your faith, along with special prayers for protection, healing, and liberation. The Rosary was Padre Pio's greatest weapon, and today it can be yours too. Don't miss this opportunity to strengthen your spiritual life with material that has helped thousands of people worldwide. To download it, simply click the link pinned in the comments below. Now let me show you the specific signs that appear when someone abandons their Rosary commitment. The first one, it's subtle but deadly. It starts in your mind. When you pray the Rosary regularly, something miraculous happens up there in that space between your ears. The gentle rhythm of Hail Marys creates an atmosphere where toxic thoughts simply can't survive, like filling a room with light. Darkness has nowhere to hide, but stop praying. That light gradually dims. The mental clarity you once enjoyed becomes foggy. Thoughts that used to bounce off your consciousness like stones off armor now find cracks to wedge into and grow. Padre Pio called them the whispers of the enemy. They start small, a cynical thought about your neighbor's kindness, lingering resentment about that old hurt, prideful judgments about others, spiritual lives. These thoughts feel like your own, so you don't question them, but they're not yours. Sarah discovered this the hard way. For 15 years, this Ohio mom prayed her Rosary every morning before her kids woke up, her spiritual coffee, her daily dose of peace. Then baby number 3 arrived. Exhaustion took over. The Rosary became hit or miss, then non-existent. Within a month, Sarah noticed something terrifying. Thoughts of inadequacy bombarded her mind like machine gun fire, comparing herself to other moms, resenting her husband's freedom, even feeling bitter toward the children she'd prayed so hard to conceive. I felt like my mind had been hijacked, she confessed. That's exactly what happened. Padre Pio explained it clearly. When we stop inviting Mary into our thoughts through the Rosary, we leave the door open for other visitors. And not all visitors come with good intentions. Here's the tragedy. Most people blame stress, hormones, circumstances. They seek therapy for what's fundamentally a spiritual problem. The mind that once found clarity in daily meditation with Mary now drowns in fog, confusion, negativity. This invasion isn't dramatic. Its poison dripped slowly into your thought life. So gradually you mistake it for normal mental struggles. But Padre Pio recognized the enemy's fingerprints on these attacks, and he knew the antidote. This one breaks hearts. When you faithfully pray the Rosary, Mary's presence becomes as real as breathing. You sense her guidance in tough decisions. Feel her peace during storms. Experience her protection like an invisible shield around your heart. But abandon the Rosary. Something devastating happens. It's not that Mary abandons you. Never. A mother doesn't stop loving her child because the child stops calling. But those lines of communication the Rosary provided, they fade like a radio signal growing weaker and weaker. Where you once felt her presence clearly, now there's only silence. Where her peace filled your heart during trials, now there's an aching emptiness. The spiritual sensitivity that let you recognize her gentle nudges becomes dull, unresponsive. Padre Pio wept when he witnessed this withdrawal. If they only knew what they were losing, he'd say, they would rather lose their sight than lose the sight of their mother. Mary's presence isn't imagination. It's not psychological comfort we create in our heads. It's spiritual reality as concrete as the ground beneath your feet. Through the Rosary, we tune our hearts to her frequency, learning to recognize her voice, her guidance, her protection. Without that daily tuning, we gradually lose the ability to perceive what was always there. Some describe it as feeling spiritually orphaned, like children lost in a crowd who can no longer hear their mother calling their name. Others experience profound loneliness that no human relationship can fill. Still others notice that coincidences that seemed like heavenly interventions just stop happening. The cruel irony. Mary is still there, still protecting, still interceding, but our capacity to perceive her has withered like an unused muscle. We become spiritually deaf to the very voice that could comfort us, blind to the very light that could guide us. Padre Pio knew this tragedy intimately. Seeing others lose this connection caused him genuine grief. They walk in darkness, he said, not because there is no light, but because they have closed their eyes to it. Now, it gets personal. The Rosary doesn't just protect individuals, it sanctifies entire households, creates an atmosphere of peace that touches every family member, every conversation, every interaction within those walls. Pray it consistently. You're inviting Mary's maternal care into your home, placing your family under her protective mantle. This creates a spiritual climate where love flourishes easier, forgiveness comes quicker, conflicts resolve peacefully. Remove that protection through neglect. The opposite manifests. Arguments that used to be rare become daily occurrences. Misunderstandings that once resolved easily now escalate into lasting tensions. The harmony that characterized your family gives way to friction, discord, chaos. Michael and Teresa lived this nightmare. 12 years of marriage. Every evening after tucking in their kids, they'd pray the Rosary together. Their sacred time, their spiritual anchor that kept their relationship rock solid through normal life stresses. Friends knew their home as a place of unusual peace and joy. Then Michael started working longer hours. Teresa became overwhelmed caring for her aging mother. Their evening Rosary gradually disappeared. At first, they barely noticed, but within weeks, something had shifted. Their home's atmosphere felt different. The children became argumentative, defiant. Michael and Teresa found themselves snapping at each other over trivial matters. The easy affection that characterized their relationship felt strained, forced. "Man, it was like our home had lost its soul," Teresa reflected later. Same people, same house, but everything felt different, heavier, more difficult. Padre Pio explained this simply. A home without the Rosary is like a garden without a gardener. Weeds will grow where flowers once bloomed. Daily prayer doesn't just change the people who pray it. It changes the spiritual atmosphere of the space where it's prayed. This isn't superstition. Padre Pio witnessed the tangible effects throughout his ministry. Homes where the Rosary was prayed regularly seemed to radiate peace. Children more obedient, spouses more patient, conflicts more easily resolved. But homes where the practice had been abandoned, they struggled with unexplained tensions and discord. Many couples endure unnecessary suffering, seeking marriage counseling for problems that have a fundamentally spiritual solution, trying to fix relationships through human means when what they really need is divine protection through faithful prayer. This sign opens the door to spiritual disasters. Padre Pio saw the spiritual realm clearly. He understood how the Rosary serves as a fortress wall against temptation and evil influence. Pray it faithfully. You're not just asking for Mary's intercession. You're actively resisting the enemy of your soul. Each Hail Mary places another stone in a protective wall around your spirit. Meditation on the mysteries keeps your mind focused on holy things, making it nearly impossible for unwholesome thoughts to take root. Abandon this daily practice. That wall crumbles. Small compromises you once would have recognized and rejected now seem reasonable. Temptations your strengthened spirit used to resist easily now feel overwhelming, irresistible. Padre Pio often said, "The devil is like a chained dog. He cannot bite those who don't come near him. But if you remove the chain, he'd leave it unfinished." The implication was crystal clear. This vulnerability manifests differently for each person, depending on their particular weaknesses. For some, it's a return to old addictions they thought they'd conquered. For others, patterns of gossip, anger, or unforgiveness that seem to arise from nowhere. Some find themselves making choices they never would have considered when their prayer life was strong. The insidious nature of this vulnerability, it progresses gradually. You don't wake up one morning completely transformed into someone you don't recognize. Instead, your moral sensitivity slowly diminishes. Your conscience becomes less sharp. Your ability to distinguish right from wrong becomes clouded. A businessman discovered this the hard way, faithful to his daily rosary for years. When work pressures caused him to abandon his prayer routine, he gradually began cutting corners in his business dealings. Nothing dramatic at first, just small compromises that seemed justified by circumstances, but over time, small compromises led to larger ones, until he found himself engaged in practices that would have horrified his earlier self. "And I don't know how it happened," he confessed. "I used to be so careful about my integrity. Now I look back and wonder who that person was who made those choices." Padre Pio called this the slow blindness of the soul. When we remove ourselves from Mary's protection through neglect of the Rosary, our spiritual vision gradually dims. We lose the ability to see clearly the difference between light and darkness, between what leads to life and what leads to destruction. The enemy is patient, cunning. He doesn't need a frontal assault if he can simply wait for us to lower our defenses. And there's no defense more powerful than the daily rosary under Mary's maternal protection. This final sign attacks the very core of what makes life worth living, your sense of purpose, meaning, joy in your relationship with God. When you pray the rosary regularly, it anchors your entire spiritual life in something transcendent, eternal. Daily meditation on Christ's mysteries keeps your heart aligned with what truly matters. The repetitive prayer creates a rhythm of grace that permeates your entire day. Lose this anchor. Something profound happens to your spiritual life. The joy that once characterized your relationship with God begins fading like colors from a photograph left in sunlight. Prayer becomes burdensome rather than refreshing. Mass feels routine rather than transformative. Your faith, once vibrant and alive, becomes stale, mechanical. This isn't a normal spiritual dry period that every mature Christian experiences. This is different. A kind of spiritual depression that has no identifiable cause and no clear remedy. You remember what it felt like to experience God's presence, His joy, His peace. But these now seem like distant memories from someone else's life. Padre Pio described this as the winter of the soul. Just as winter is characterized by the absence of life and growth, this spiritual condition is marked by the absence of everything that makes faith meaningful. You continue going through religious motions, but the heart behind those motions has grown cold, distant. Elena experienced this devastating transformation. A devout Catholic who'd served in parish ministries for decades. For years, her daily rosary had been the source of her spiritual strength and joy. But when health problems and family crises overwhelmed her schedule, the rosary became one more burden she felt she couldn't carry. "And I kept telling myself I'd get back to it when things calmed down," she shared. But months passed. Things never calmed down. And slowly, I realized that everything that used to give me joy in my faith had disappeared. I felt like I was going through the motions of being Catholic, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. This loss is particularly tragic because it often leads to complete abandonment of faith. People in this state begin questioning everything they once believed. They look at their former spiritual enthusiasm as naive, misguided. Some even leave the church entirely, convinced their faith was nothing more than psychological comfort they've now outgrown. But Padre Pio knew the truth. This spiritual desolation isn't a sign of maturity or intellectual growth. It's a sign of a soul that has wandered away from its mother and lost its way home. The joy and meaning don't disappear because they were never real. They disappear because the connection that made them accessible has been severed. The most heartbreaking aspect, the remedy, is so simple, yet it seems impossible to the person experiencing it. Returning to the rosary feels insurmountable when you can barely remember why prayer ever mattered. It's like trying to remember the sound of music when you've gone deaf. Yet Padre Pio insisted it's never too late. Even in the depths of spiritual winter, the first faltering steps back to the Rosary can begin restoring what was lost. Mary never stops being a mother, even when her children wander far from home. Recognize yourself in any of these signs. Please don't despair. The beauty of Padre Pio's teaching comes with an equally powerful message of hope. No matter how far you've drifted, no matter how long you've been away, no matter how cold your heart has become, it's never too late to come home to Mary. Padre Pio spent his entire ministry helping souls return to practices that would restore their spiritual vitality. He never gave up on anyone, no matter how far they'd fallen or how long they'd been away. But Mary doesn't count the days of absence, he'd tell his spiritual children. She counts only the joy of return. The first step is always the humblest: acknowledgement. Simply admitting to yourself and to God that you've neglected this vital practice is already movement toward grace. No elaborate confessions needed, no dramatic gestures, just simple, honest recognition. I've let this slide, and I can see the effects in my life. Second step, start small. Don't try immediately returning to a full 15-decade rosary if you've been away for months or years. That's like trying to run a marathon after being sedentary. You'll burn out before you build the habit. Instead, commit to just 1 decade a day, 5 minutes, 10 Hail Marys, 1 Our Father, 1 Glory Be. That's all. Choose a specific time and stick to it religiously. Padre Pio was adamant about consistency over quantity. Better 1 decade prayed faithfully every day than 15 decades prayed sporadically when you feel like it. The key is rebuilding the habit, creating that daily connection with Mary that will gradually restore all that was lost. Create a sacred space, even just a corner of your bedroom with a simple image of Our Lady and perhaps a candle. This physical space anchors your spiritual practice and signals to your soul that this time is sacred, protected. Don't be discouraged if your heart feels cold or your mind wanders during those first days or weeks. Padre Pio taught that fidelity is more important than feeling. Mary hears the cry of your heart even when your lips feel like they're just moving through motions. He assured his spiritual children, your willingness to return is already a prayer she treasures. As you rebuild this foundation, gradually expand. Add a 2nd decade, then a 3rd. Eventually, work back to a full 5-decade rosary. But take your time. This isn't a race. It's a homecoming. Mary's promises to those faithful to the rosary are breathtaking. Special protection during life, assistance at the hour of death, preservation from mortal sin, countless graces for those who honor her through this prayer. Padre Pio was living testimony to these promises. His entire life demonstrated what happens when someone places themselves completely under Mary's protection through faithful rosary devotion. But perhaps the most beautiful promise addresses every sign we've discussed today. Mary promises peace to troubled hearts, clarity to confused minds, harmony to troubled families, strength against temptation, joy to souls that have forgotten how to rejoice. Every single consequence of abandoning the rosary can be reversed through the simple act of returning to it. The restoration doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. Just as negative signs appeared gradually, positive transformation returns gradually. First, you'll notice a subtle shift in your thought life, a little more peace, a little less anxiety. Then you'll begin sensing Mary's presence again, faintly at first, then more clearly. Your relationships will begin healing, your resistance to temptation will strengthen, and slowly, surely, the joy of your salvation will be restored. Padre Pio's final advice to anyone beginning this journey back was simple. Trust in Mary's love more than you trust in your own weakness. Her desire to help you is greater than your ability to fail her. We've journeyed through spiritual territory Padre Pio knew intimately today. The consequences of abandoning the rosary and the pathway back to restoration. We've seen the 5 signs, dark thoughts that cloud mental clarity, the withdrawal of Mary's presence that leaves us spiritually orphaned, disturbances in homes and relationships that steal peace, vulnerability to temptations we once resisted easily, and the loss of spiritual joy that makes faith feel empty and cold. But more importantly, we've learned Padre Pio's unwavering truth. None of these conditions are permanent. Every single consequence of abandoning the Rosary can be reversed through the simple act of picking up those beads again and beginning anew. You don't need to be perfect to start. You don't need to feel ready or worthy or spiritually prepared. You just need to be willing to take that first small step back toward the mother who has never stopped watching for your return. Remember Maria from our opening story. After months of living with growing darkness in her home and heart, she finally understood what had happened. One evening, she found her rosary buried in a drawer, covered with dust, but still intact. With tears in her eyes, she held those familiar beads and whispered, "Mary, I'm sorry, help me come home." That night, she prayed just 1 decade. It felt awkward and forced after so long away, but she persevered. The next night, another decade. Within a week, the nightmares stopped. Within a month, peace had returned to her home. Within 3 months, she was back to her full daily rosary. The woman who had once felt lost in spiritual darkness was again radiant with faith's joy. Your story can have the same ending. Whether you've been away for days, months, or years, Mary is waiting. With the infinite patience of a mother who knows her child will eventually find their way home. If this message has touched your heart, if you've recognized yourself in any of these signs, if you feel called to return to the practice that could transform your spiritual life, write in the comments, "I return to the Rosary today." Your declaration could be the encouragement someone else needs to take their own first step back to Mary. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Padre Pio's wisdom about the Rosary. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss future messages that could strengthen your faith and deepen your relationship with God. But most importantly, don't let this moment pass without action. Find your rosary. If you don't have one, get one today. Choose your time. Start small. Begin tonight. As Padre Pio reminded us from his own deep experience, the rosary is the most beautiful and most powerful prayer. We should always have it with us. When we say the rosary, we approach Jesus through Mary. We never go to Jesus except through Mary. May you discover for yourself the protection, peace, and joy that await those who place themselves under Mary's maternal care through faithful devotion to the Holy Rosary. The beads are waiting. Mary is waiting. Your restored spiritual life is waiting. Begin today.